Now going to question 13, we always start with the prompt, which here is asking which choice describes data that supports the researcher's claim. So what is the researcher's claim? Let's start reading. These people recently examined several plots within a diverse plant community. They calculated that if individual plants were randomly distributed on this particular landscape, only about 15% would be with other plants in patches of vegetation. They counted the number of juvenile plants of the species growing in patches of vegetation and the number growing alone on bare ground, and compared those numbers to what would be expected if plants were randomly distributed. Based on these results, they claim that plants of these species that grow in close proximity to other plants gain an advantage at an early developmental stage. So the claim here is the last part. They claim that plants of these species that grow close to other plants gain an advantage at an early developmental stage. So now looking back at the paragraph for a moment, the prediction, which is being called the calculation here, is that if the plants were randomly distributed, only about 15% of them would be with other plants. And now when you look at the table, how many were found in patches of vegetation, in other words, with other plants? And the numbers are way higher than 15%. 59, 59, 53, 60, 52. And so we're seeing that the numbers came out way higher than they predicted. So let's look at the answer choices. A, for all 5 species, less than 75% of plants were growing in patches of vegetation. That's true to the data, but it doesn't speak to what the results actually were, which is the idea that more of them grew in patches of vegetation. A is emphasizing that it was less than a certain number. B, the species with the greatest number of juvenile plants in patches of vegetation was this one. And that may or may not be true. Let's just check if it's true. Actually, it's actually false to the data because this one right here has 52. Another one has 59.6. So it's not the greatest one anyway. But even if it were, that doesn't prove the point that we were looking for. C, for these 2 plants, the percent of juvenile plants growing in vegetation was less than what would be expected. Well, what was expected was 15. They were all way higher than that. So this one is just plain false. And now D, for each species, the percent of juvenile plants growing in patches of vegetation was substantially higher than what would be expected if plants were randomly distributed. And that makes total sense because if they were randomly distributed, the prediction was 15%, which we're seeing right here. And the numbers all came out greater than 50%, which is substantially higher. So the answer for 13 is D.